So now keep in mind that our goal is to reduce 40 tons for the entire industry. And so we really don't care about who is doing the reduction, right? Especially when for greenhouse gas like carbon dioxide, for example, right? What we care about is the overall reduction. Now, with an emission standard, we ask both firms to reduce 20 tons, and the total cost for firm one is this triangle, and total cost for firm two will be that triangle. And then we saw that the total cost for the entire industry is $8,000. Now, clearly, you can see here that firm one could reduce emission at a much lower rate, and so to reduce 40 tons, right, it would be much more efficient to get a firm one to reduce 30 tons instead. And then now firm two, because firm two is much more costly for them, they only have to now reduce 10 tons. And we can see here, without going through the math for now, we can see here that the total cost to reduce 40 tons, right, could actually be just this lower triangle here combined. Right? And that will be the most efficient allocation, right? It's 30 and 10 instead of 20 and 20. Okay. All right. So now, how do we get there? Right? How do we how do we get firm one to reduce 30 tons and firm two to reduce 10 tons? Right. Now, one of the problem is well, if you know what the MCR is for both firms, then clearly you can make this make this mandate, right? But realistically, right, the regulatory agencies such as EPA have we do not have this information, right? And we've seen this before with with the Coase theorem, and so Coase theorem can be applied to this situation. So a tradable pollution permit system is based off the Coase theorem. Remember, Coase theorem says the optimal outcome can be reached through negotiation and transaction of property rights, regardless of the initial allocation of permit. Now, this is key here. The last line, regardless of initial allocation of permit, right? Because again, the government doesn't know the marginal cost curves for each firm in the industry, right? But what Coase theorem tells us, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter how the allocation, how the government allocate these permits, right? The end result, right? Regardless of who you allocate to or how many to each, you will get to through negotiation. Through negotiation, the firms will get to this result. Now, the government still has an important role. The government needs to ensure that these conditions are there in the market for Coase theorem to work out. So one, property rights have to be clearly defined. The people have to know what it is exactly that they're buying and selling. Now, this might not as easy as you think. Like, for example, right, if you're buying and selling land, for example, right? Well, who owns the water that is underneath? Because water flows through, right? Water, doesn't follow borders, or animals. Right? When you buy the land, or do you have a right to all of the animals that comes across your land, right? So these things have to be worked out, right? But when you buy property rights, right, you have to clearly define what exactly is it that you're buying. The second role of the government is ensure that transaction costs are negligible, right? So negotiation, enforcement, and information gathering. So the government will be there to enforce it, right, once an agreement has been set. Right? So now let's talk about let's talk about how do we get started, right, on the emission program. So right now, again, let's go back to there's no regulation. The industry is currently polluting. So to start a tradable pollution permit program, first you figure out how much each firm is polluting at the moment. So firm one, let's say that firm one is polluting 50 tons. Firm two is also polluting 50 tons. So together, total of 100 tons. Now remember, our goal is to reduce 40 tons, right? We already decided that. We know that that's what we want to do. So we set up a permit system such that the firms can only pollute if they have one permit for every unit of pollution. Okay, so basically, if you have 15 permits, then you're only allowed to pollute 15 tons. If you're caught polluting anymore without holding the permit, then we shut down your business. Now, so once we have that, then if our goal is to reduce 40 tons, this is a little tricky, all right? We want to reduce 40 tons. So we can do that by only allocating 60 tons. Right? Because if we know that they're polluting 100 tons, we give 60 tons, then the industry will have to figure it out on their own, right? How to reduce 40 tons so they meet the mandate. Okay, so that's the setup for the tradable pollution permit system, and let's see how this works out between our two firms here.